You suck with Bretonnia. Admit it. Go on, admit it now, and I'll stop cooing soft reassurances into your ear. Shh, 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 shh. Don't worry, you're really very good at this game. You're also very handsome. And today I'm going to tell you why. Are you having trouble getting your peasants to do their duty? Are your Lewin campaigns more like loser campaigns? Well, don't worry. Your favourite duke from across the sea, Alberic de Blakelow, is here to look after you, and today we'll be diving deep into why you suck with Bretonnia, Luon de Leoncoeur, and Couronne as a faction. My name is Blake and I bid you my fondest welcome to Blake's Takes, where today I'll be giving you my take on why you're just awful with Bretonnia. Is my take hot or not? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel out. Now, without further ado, let's couch our lances and get into it. Reason you suck with Bretonnia. Number 1. You forget your vows. Usually when I do these guides, I go through the first few turns, but this actually comes before that. Both your lords and heroes have vows which you need to manually select in order to complete to get really valuable benefits. Don't forget to do this. You'll get a notification when vows are completed, but you won't get a notification when a lord or hero requires a vow to be selected. Completing your vows for lords and heroes is extremely important for Bretonnia, so don't forget to do this. Every time you recruit a lord or hero, make sure you do this the first chance you can get. Typically, to collect the first vow, all you need to do is level up 5 times. This is much easier to do at a lower level, as you don't need as much experience to level up when your character is a low level as opposed to a high one. So, if you forget to do this and you've blundered through a campaign without doing it, it will get progressively harder to complete your vows. Your damsel hero that you start with has to select a vow. You should do this immediately, and remember to do it whenever you hire another hero or lord. Hopefully, CA will add something in the future by the end turn button which warns you when you have heroes and lords without selected vows. Maybe similar to the Path of Chaos mechanic with spending souls to make demon princes and the like, but currently there isn't, so it's very easy to miss. Make sure you check your lords and heroes regularly to make sure they're progressing their vows. I can't overstate how important it is to do this, so don't forget to do this. Now, in terms of the vows I take typically, I will pledge to chivalry, which just means leveling up 5 times as I just mentioned. That's pretty straightforward. Then I will normally take the pledge to Manan as my second vow. All you need to do is fight a battle at sea and win it. This can be done with fighting a pirate faction or picking up sea treasures and fighting the subsequent battle out of it. Then, normally, for the last vow, I will take the generic kill 5 lords in battle option. These are typically the ones I go for, but you might get some opportunistically easy ones, like defeating a legendary lord of a faction you may be at war with. So just keep your eyes peeled for that, but above all else, don't forget to select your vows, you filthy peasant. Reason you suck with Bretonnia. Number 2. You don't slay the Skullsmasherz. You start at war with Mousillon. As starting enemies go, they're quite dangerous. They have a large force already inside your borders, and their capital is extremely well fortified, so they can be very tricky to remove with your starting trashy peasants. But you are also at war with the Skullsmasherz, an orcish tribe holed up in the mountains to the south of you. These guys will be quite a thorn in your side if you leave them alone, so follow this order of operations to get your campaign started. Attack the starting enemy vampire force. You want to fight this battle manually to conserve the lives of your men. Your first battle is actually quite challenging, so pay attention to minimise casualties. You have 2 Knights of the Realm, 2 Knights Errant, some Pegasus Knights, and Lewin himself. The rest of your forces are pretty bad. Knights of the Realm need to fight their starting Black Knights. Those are their most dangerous units. Knights of the Realm have a bonus versus large, so they're perfect for getting rid of these early Black Knights. Knights of the Realm are an extremely cost-effective mid-tier unit for Bretonnia. They have great stats for their price point, and they'll be an absolute linchpin for your forces throughout a Bretonnian campaign. They have great armour, speed, and that oh so important bonus versus large. You want to get to a tier 3 stables as soon as possible to start decking out armies with these guys. They're an excellent and reasonably priced cavalry unit. Now use your Pegasus Knights to scout the enemy's formation. They will have 2 hidden units of crypt ghouls. Discover the crypt ghouls and then charge them with your knights errant. Now, Lewin is not a strong fighter yet, and the vampire lord you're facing will spam spirit leeches on him, so Lewin should charge into the lord, do a bit of damage, and then charge back out again. Rinse and repeat. This is one of the harder starting battles as there's quite a lot of moving parts, but take the fight to them with your cavalry, use and abuse your mobility, and you'll pick up a decent win. Now attack and take the city of Longueuil. This is an easy fight. Use your Pegasus Knights to kill the Fellbats, and then use your Knights to intercept and kill their direwolves. The rest of their forces pose no threat to your cycle-charging cavalry. You've completed your first province. Well done you. But, unfortunately, you're not done yet. Not by a long shot. Now, build a farm in Couronne, and upgrade the settlement to Tier 2, and recruit some more trashy infantry. Also, hire yourself a prophetess lord with the Law of Life. This handy spellcaster comes pre-equipped with the Earthblood spell, which will be really helpful in keeping Lewin healthy as he tanks a lot of the damage which is about to come his way. Set Couronne's province commandment to extensive patrols, which gives you extra recruitment capacity. Very differently from other starting enemies, you want to turn your attention onto the Skullsmasherz now. So, for turn 2, move Lewin and his new prophetess friend down towards Grungzint. Hire yourself yet another lord who will also come down for the party. Bretonnia don't have the supply lines mechanic of other races, so you want to be hiring a lot of lords to follow other lords around to reinforce, like an extra hero unit. It'll also have the added benefit of getting their vows completed faster. Speaking of which, don't forget to do that. Now have Lewin hire as many archers as you can muster. On to turn 3, attack Grungzint and the smelly Skullsmasherz that are hiding in there. Use the archers to firstly wipe out their archers. Then you want to charge Lewin and his friendly lord into the enemy to start hacking through the greenskins. What you'll notice is the enemy will start blobbing up around your 2 lords. This is the perfect opportunity to hit the enemy with your archers as they're so close together. Keep Lewin and the other lord topped up with healing from your prophetess with the Earthblood spell. When you've run out of arrows, magic, or your lords have started taking too much damage, then toss your cavalry and infantry in to mop up any of the survivors. If you don't attack the greenskins early, they'll recruit a big army to come and invade you. Trust me, you don't want to be fighting a war on 2 fronts. Crush the Skullsmasherz on turn 3, and that removes an enemy from the board for you. Now we turn our attention back to Mousillon. Reason you suck with Bretonnia. Number 3. You don't maul Mousillon. You've slain one of your 2 starting enemies. You're feeling like quite the dude.
I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, you know?
However, that feeling does not last long, as those horrible vampires of Mousillon will be plotting your demise and building up tremendous force to bring against you. They will have lots of forces, and their capital city has extremely strong fortifications for you to surmount so early on in the game. These fortifications are really quite strong, and you're going to have great difficulty beating them if Mousillon has an army garrisoned in there on top of it. So march your forces back from the Skullsmasherz hidey hole and have them set up on the border of Lyonesse and Couronne. You don't want to be waiting in the Lyonesse region because of the vampiric corruption that'll be assailing your forces, so wait on the border. You start off with a military access agreement with Lyonesse, so don't worry about diplomatic penalties for going onto their land. Lyonesse is also at war with the vampires, and they'll make a very helpful ally in the coming turns. As you valiantly killed off the starting vampire force, the Red Duke will be amassing at Mousillon to make an attempt at taking Lyonesse. You don't want this to happen. At around turn 7, they're going to try this, so by this point, you want your forces back in position and in ambush stance, ready to reinforce the city of Lyonesse before they get swamped by the Red Duke's forces. Now, having your forces close by to Lyonesse's capital gives their forces some backbone, as you're effectively defending their territory from a vampire attack, and they'll go out to try and fight the Red Duke. either destroying themselves in the process and doing catastrophic damage to the Red Duke, or forcing the Red Duke to go and attack from a weird angle, and the Lyonesse force can go and give chase. So what's happened over the end turn here is the Red Duke has gone to try and attack Lyonesse. He has discovered our ambush waiting for him, and as a result of this, he has force-marched all the way back into the ocean, because he was too cowardly to take the fight. So now he's trying to attack from a different angle. This has now given you an opening to attack Mousillon with a now greatly depleted garrison. This fight is still very hard, but it's actually winnable now. If the Red Duke is garrisoned in there with a full stack, it's basically not winnable with your starting troops. You'll run out of the required ammunition and magic to grind through all of these forces, but with a smaller force in there, we can take it on. So here's how to win this siege. You want to attack from this position here where there are no towers. Turn your archers off of fire at will, as they are the critical damage dealing component of this fight, and you want to be spending that ammunition on their very high value troops, like the Graveguard with polearms, Graveguard with great weapons, or their Black Knights. You want to ignore the skeletons and the zombies. But don't start shooting straight away. First thing is first, have Lewin go and destroy the gate. Secondly, you're looking for opportunities for your Pegasus Knights to charge into combatants that have mounted the walls. The Pegasus Knights will knock models off the walls and to their deaths. However, because the walls are still a massive janky pile of garbage, models can get stuck on them.
They'll expect one of us in the wreckage, brother.
The Pegasus Knights can also go and kill any of the Fellbats that the enemy has. They basically take Fellbats down to half health on the charge, but you don't want to leave them in sustained combat with a lot of Fellbats. In this fight there were 3 Fellbat units patrolling, so I left them alone to focus on clearing infantry off the walls. Now, with the gate broken, you want to send Lewin and the other lord you hired into the breach to start attacking the infantry which is in there. The infantry will start blobbing up around Lewin and his lord homie, similar to the Skullsmasherz fight. This is when your archers start firing, when the infantry are massed around them. It'll make their arrows basically sure to hit something. Now, your other Law of Life caster lord can cast Earthbloods on Leon and the other lord to keep their health topped up. They can also cast Awakening of the Wood to blow up this infantry blob. When you run out of arrows and your lords start hitting their healing cap and can no longer be replenished, you'll want to start sending your knights in. Hopefully, at that point, they'll be sending their Black Knights in. Remember, Knights of the Realm counter these guys with their anti-large damage, so match those Black Knights with your Knights of the Realm, and make sure that Lewin and your other lord are attacking any lords and heroes which might be in this ball. The rest of the army will crumble away and you can mop up the rest and enjoy the spoils of the newly liberated Mousillon. So remember, act as a lifeline for Lyonesse and goad the Red Duke out of his fortress to take an unwinnable fight where you're backed up by the garrison of Lyonesse and their armies. Then maul Mousillon with your forces. Cycle charge units off the wall with your Pegasus Knights, conserve the ammunition of your bowmen until the enemy has blobbed around your melee lords. Punish this blob with arrows and magic, and use Earthbloods to keep your lords in the fight. Reason you suck with Bretonnia. Number 4. You don't understand your filthy peasant economy. Smelly, emaciated, flea-ridden peasants.
Yes, me lord.
These happy chappies are the bedrock of your economy. You can draft them to fight for you, but you'll start seeing a massive wealth drop-off from your farms if you overutilise your peasantry in warfare, as opposed to where they truly belong, which is in the fields, bringing in the crops. Now, the number of peasants you can field without any significant impact to your farms is here. You can increase this number by conquering territory, which gives you an extra 2 capacity per territory conquered, and with some technologies which offer you extra peasant capacity, like United Bretonnia. Now, if you're going for a heavy peasant strategy, where you're exceeding the peasant cap, you can get around the majority of the negative effects by building industry buildings, these buildings here. The peasant economy only affects farmland yields, so if you only build industry buildings, then you will experience no major side effects to throwing heaps of your peasants into combat, apart from maybe emotional side effects. Have you selected your vows? The negative effects only affect farmland income, and you also lose free upkeep on base peasant units. Now, this strategy isn't advised. Industrial economy is substantially weaker than farm economies for Bretonnia. Industry buildings take twice as long to build and generate you less revenue. There could be an argument for having industry-focused buildings in main recruitment centres, as the storehouse building that allows you to construct higher-tier versions of the industry building provides some modest extra recruitment capacity benefits and some extra campaign movement range. But really, farms are just superior, in my opinion. They provide a lot more money and they take less time to build. They also provide growth with their booster building, which is extremely critical for Bretonnia, because your early game units are basically just peasants. Great, unwashed masses of illiterate peasants.
Righto.
Farms also give you the best peasant units in peasant archers and base peasants as well. So why wouldn't you just pick up both of the economy buildings, I hear you ask? Well, the higher tier of economy buildings have debuffs, which will reduce the output of one or the other. So, as an example, if you build up both to tier 3 in a major settlement with their add-on booster buildings, which is a requirement to get them to tier 3, they'll effectively cancel each other out in terms of revenue, which obviously doesn't make any sense to do. However, when both of the buildings are tier 1, they don't have that effect. So you can put both of them down in a tier 1 settlement, but I'd sort of advise against this, as the water wheels and storehouse buildings not only give you more money, but they also come with other benefits as well. So I'd say it would be a very rare use case for using both of these buildings at tier 1. I'm sure there'll probably be some rare cases where that's worth doing, but you either want to stick with industry or farming generally, and most of the time I would choose farming. Because the revenue is greater and you get growth from windmill booster buildings, it gives you access also to your best peasant units. Just make sure you don't over-recruit peasant units and you'll maintain a nice, healthy agrarian economy. Now, speaking of filthy, decrepit peasants, reason you suck with Bretonnia, number 5. You don't understand your filthy peasant units. Gross, yuck, peasants. Unfortunately, these guys will be the quivering backbone of your early game forces. Your late game armies will be comprised of glorious Grail Knights, which are basically the Warhammer Fantasy World's version of Space Marines. Unkillable demigods that cut a bloody swathe through basically anything. But in the early game, you have these guys, the unwashed proletariat class. I'm going to make it very simple. There are basically only 3, maybe 4 units at a push, which are categorized as peasants, which I recommend recruiting. The rest of them are fucking useless. This entire building chain is useless. If you're playing on the harder difficulties, do not recruit these units. They simply don't work. If you're playing on the lower difficulties, I'd still advise you not to recruit these. They are the worst melee infantry in the game. If you're going to use melee infantry, just use peasants. If you have your peasant economy on lock, these guys have free upkeep, so you can field as many as you like within that number for free. Anything from this building all the way up to foot squires costs some level of upkeep, which, for the mathematically inclined, is an increase of infinity%. Not a good trade for units which will perform only very slightly better in the same role. None of these units are worth paying money for. Get them in the bin and never build this building. It doesn't increase any hero caps. There is literally no need to ever purchase this building. Now, on to more useless peasants in your Yeoman Horsemen, specifically the melee version. This is a terrible unit and should never be recruited. Just an awful stat line and no use cases for bringing them. I've seen them lose in fights to archers. They're just that bad. Never buy them. The Yeoman Horse Archers are a better choice. They can do a bit of harassment, but they're still not great. I wouldn't really recommend getting them, but they do actually serve something of a purpose, unlike their melee counterparts. They're maybe the 4th unit which I referred to earlier. You might want to get them. Personally, I think the micro required to make these guys work isn't worth it, and you have cheaper and easier to use options. But Yeoman Horse Archers can actually do something, as opposed to their melee counterparts. Now, onto the peasants which are actually useful. Normal peasants. They're terrible units tactically, but very useful strategically, because they are cheap to recruit and free of upkeep, as we just spoke about. Good for padding out armies in the early game, they're good lance fodder. Now onto peasant archers. These guys are great early game units. They have a decent range, they can have fire or poison arrows, all of these are solid choices. These guys will actually do some damage as opposed to all of your melee peasants. They're also recruited from the farm, which is an income building, as opposed to a barracks which sits there and does nothing. Then there are the trebuchets, specifically the tier 2 trebuchets. For some really unfathomable reason, the blessed trebuchets are a tier 5 unit, which is frankly absurd. Even the building's extra bonuses don't make any sense. It gives you a discount on building costs, but you're at tier 5, so you're not building anything else at tier 5. But yeah, sorry, we're just talking about the tier 2 one. It's a solid early game artillery piece. Really helpful in early game sieges, especially for your peasant stacks. A couple of them will make a big difference. They are thoroughly outclassed later in the game though, but they're useful for lords who haven't completed their vows and need a siege attacker, and they do pack a good bit of powerful, albeit very inaccurate, firepower. So, in short, it's only your ranged peasants which serve a purpose on the battlefield other than getting chopped up by the enemy. Your dedicated melee peasants will lose to almost everything in the game and are simply there to get chopped up by the enemy. Your regular peasants are the obvious choice for getting chopped up by the enemy because they are super cheap to recruit and have free upkeep, and they only require a farm to recruit them. Even then, I would rather just have more archers to do more damage. If you need melee infantry, form some alliance and get other races' infantry, because your infantry is simply the worst in the game. Now, recruiting peasant stacks is advised. I will go into this more later in terms of their strategic effectiveness on the overworld campaign map in this video, but hopefully this section has underlined what will make a good peasant stack and what will make a bad peasant stack. Oh, hold on a second, I nearly forgot about these peasants. Yep, they're shit too. Oops, just lost my butt plug. Reason you suck with Bretonnia. Number 6. You don't know how to use your armies. The grand armies of Bretonnia are yours to command, but do you know how to use them? Bretonnia is a difficult faction to play in the current context of the game. It requires good micromanagement of your units and a strong understanding of what your armies are actually good at doing. We'll look at this through a tactical and a strategic lens. So there are 3 major tactical strengths to Bretonnian armies. The first strength, and probably the most obvious, is their cavalry. Simply put, you have the best selection of cavalry in the game. So what is cavalry good at in this game? Well, I'll tell you, it's mobility. Exploiting mobility is the key to effective use of cavalry. So, understanding the concept of charging into the enemy and then pulling out to reposition and charge back in again is the key to getting the best out of your cavalry. Knowing when to charge and what enemy units to charge will be the difference between victory and defeat as a Bretonnian player. We'll go into more detail on this later. The second major tactical advantage is you have access to the most potent and flexible melee air units in the game, in Pegasus Knights, Royal Pegasus Knights, and Hippogriff Knights. Unfortunately, these are unlocked very late into the campaign at tier 4 and 5 settlements, but it is a major strength of yours in the late game. Hippogriffs are like a sledgehammer. They're slower moving and can basically be thrown into anything to do good damage to them. Pegasus Knights are your scalpel, a surgical tool that will be used to take out key targets like artillery teams, ranged units, and other isolated large units, utilising their extreme speed. The third major tactical advantage you have is easy access to life magic. Life magic is one of the most powerful laws of magic in the game. This allows you to heal your troops and does obscene damage to blobs of infantry with the Dwellers Below spell. You can get this at any point by hiring a prophetess with the Law of Life, as shown in Reason 2. Now, from a strategic standpoint, your key advantage is that you don't pay the supply lines penalty that all other factions do. This means that your armies don't get exponentially more expensive the more of them you have, as it is with most other races. You should be recruiting a lot of lords to follow your main armies around. Now, because you don't have unlimited money, these will typically be made up of peasants. Now, peasants are useful in sieges, where your cavalry's mobility is restricted. They bring the trebuchets and the archers to make your sieges go more smoothly, whilst your main force should be comprised of knights to take care of the land battles. But that is not the main reason you bring reinforcing armies. The main reason I do this is to allow me to uncheck large battles. This means that instead of fighting a maximum of 40 plus units in a battle, reinforcements are drip-fed through to the enemy. Now, this is extremely important for cavalry-based armies, as it confers your tactical advantage of mobility back to you. How does this do this, I hear you cry? Well, it does it by restricting the number of units on the battlefield. It allows you to continue using the space on the battle map, which is imperative to make cavalry work effectively. Let me show you in an example. We're fighting this massive horde of high-tier Skaven. We have deselected control large armies, and our cavalry can basically handle each of these high-tier Skaven armies which are coming at us. None of the supporting peasant stack even shows up. This has changed what Auto-Resolve calculated as a valiant defeat into a heroic victory.
Nice.
And that's purely because of the decision to uncheck control large armies. If all of those units came onto the battlefield at once, the enemy would just occupy so much of the battlefield that there would be no way for me to pick and choose my engagements. There'd just be too many rats to get through for someone of my admittedly quite poor micro skill level. But even then, if my peasants came onto the field too, they would do rather little and actually serve to get in the way of me utilising the space. They would actually assist the Skaven by denying my cavalry the ability to move around the map. In a similar vein, this is why Lightning Strike is very effective for Bretonnian lords to pick up. Not just as a way for denying reinforcements entirely, but also it delays enemy reinforcements too, passively by up to 50%. Which, in this example here, fighting a large, high-tier Chaos Dwarf army, I managed to beat it by beating the attacking army before their reinforcements can even come in, again netting me another heroic victory. Whoa. Learning to control enemy reinforcements is the key to maintaining your mobility advantage, as your enemies can't swamp the field with their troops. This keeps your cavalry effective throughout the battle. So those are Bretonnia's military strengths at a tactical and strategic level. Now let's break down your tactical strengths to overcome an enemy. So firstly, let's talk about hammer and anvil, the concept of pinning your enemies in place and then delivering a charge from the flank and rear. In the early game, you'll only really be able to afford peasants to be your anvil, but later on you can use questing knights and then the glorious Grail Guardians, which are your best anvils by a substantial margin. You want a relatively small anvil. This gives you more space to move your flanking hammers around the enemy to deliver their charges. Your damage will be coming from the flank and the rear, so with the anvil I'll basically set them up in a locked control group and then just throw them at the enemy. It doesn't really matter what they charge into, they're only there to hold the enemy in place. Then I make a control group for the left flank and make a control group for the right. These will make up the most substantial part of your forces. Their job is to get around the back and flanks of the enemy and charge into them. These will typically be made out of Knights Errant, Knights of the Realm, Questing Knights, and later on in the game, Grail Knights. Then I'll also have a control group for Flyers. These will fly over the anvil and charge in from behind, causing a full envelopment of the enemy. These are also hammers. Hippogriffs can basically be tossed into anywhere. Pegasus Knights, you want to send them after softer targets. Hippogriffs are excellent when paired with healing magic because they have a lot of health per entity, so you can keep them fighting for a very long time with Earthbloods and regrowth spells. I'll have my paladins track down and kill lords and heroes, and that will normally be the battle. Obviously, there will be times when the terrain prevents you from initiating an envelopment like this. There may be choke points on the map, you may have been ambushed. In these sort of circumstances, you need to have the enemy chasing you. So, in an ambush, you want to get your cavalry out to the flanks of the map by utilising your mobility. In a defensive choke point map, utilise your caster lord or hero, you should have a caster in every army, to go and provoke the enemy into becoming aggressive by hitting them with a few spells. They will then come to you, and then you can use your mobility on the sides of the map. Now, in terms of charging into the enemy, the hotkey J can be quite useful in getting your cavalry out of sticky situations if they get caught. It makes them do an about-face turn and basically charge away from the fight. So tap J and that will immediately get them out of the fight as best as they can, and then you can just keep dragging them further and further away from the battle. Finally, I also want to talk to you about saturation. Saturation is where a model is surrounded by enemies and how many models can attack an entity at once. This is determined by the size of the attacking entity. For example, War Dogs are excellent at saturating enemies, because they're small, fast-moving units which flood through all the gaps and start chowing down on your foes. Cavalry is not good at this, because they are large units. They won't saturate well into enemy units because of their size, despite being quick on their feet. So what does this mean? This means when your hammers are engaging, you want to make sure each cavalry unit is engaging a different target. Don't just have your entire hammer come down on one unit, otherwise it'll form into a big blob of units not doing anything. You want to maximise the surface area that your cavalry is affecting by having each individual cavalry unit attack a different target. There are plenty of factions that do really well when they blob all of their units into a pile, like Nurgle or the Vampire Counts. Bretonnia is not one of those factions. Now, just like in real life, it is often better to lean into your strengths than try to compensate for your weaknesses. Your mobility is your biggest strength. Use the map. Use your mobility. Lean heavily into your mobility and control the battlefield with your reinforcing armies, and you'll become a much better Bretonnian player. Reason you suck with Bretonnia, number 7. You don't know how to siege. Oh dear, we've just lost our greatest strength, mobility. We're stuck in a siege. Now, I covered this in sections 1 and 2, so I'll be very brief. Your best way of sieging is taking a lord and a few heroes to go and fight inside the settlement. Keep them together, the enemy will blob up around them, then you heal your lords with life magic, whilst peppering them with spells, arrows and trebuchets. When you have expended those resources, you send in your cavalry to mop up what's left. Now, there are certainly other ways to siege if you utilise alliances, which I'm going to talk to you about right now. Even though the section is about research and technology, it is actually about alliances. Trust me, just trust me, okay? Trust. Reason you suck with Bretonnia, number 8. You don't know what to research. The Bretonnian tech tree is a bit of a wacky one, but you have insanely powerful technologies down the chivalric code tech tree. Chivalric? Chivalric? Chivalric. The chivalric code tech line.
I'm learning.
Firstly, I prioritise getting your confederations in order. These technologies don't revive legendary lords, they just give you the opportunity to confederate them. There's a very good chance that Carcassonne will be wiped out very quickly. The Fey Enchantress is absolutely surrounded by dangerous enemy legendary lords, so I make a beeline to try and save the Fey Enchantress. She's a very good legendary lord, so she's my priority. Then, once I have my confederations in place, I skip United Bretonnia for a bit and start picking up these diplomatic bonuses. Overseas diplomacy gives you a massive +50 relations with all humans, high elves and lizardmen. Then I pick up the dwarves and knights errantry diplomatic buffs. This will help you get a confederation with Rapants and net some alliances with the dwarves. Now, with those alliances in place, you can begin to hire your allies units and use them instead of your feeble infantry. Personally, I don't really bother doing this too much, because it takes a long time for you to get enough alliance points to actually avail of many of these units, but it certainly is an option. This can help you out in sieges by getting some killy Empire artillery or some stout dwarven iron breakers to bust open fortresses, but I don't think it's a necessity though. As I said in Reason 6, I think it's easier to lean into your strengths rather than compensate for your weaknesses. The main reason you're getting these alliances is to help you not get embroiled in more wars than you can handle. That's also the main reason why I don't advise going down the Decrees of Bretonnia tech tree, because each of those technologies comes with a massive -50 diplomatic malice which will embroil you in more wars. So I don't really advise taking these at all. Once I've got my confederations and diplomatic bonuses sorted, I then start working on the right hand side of the tech tree for better farming gear for more income, and some of the massive ward save bonuses you can get for Grail Knights, who'll be making up the bulk of your late game armies. Reason you suck with Bretonnia. Number 9. You care too much about chivalry. Chivalry is an important mechanic for Bretonnia. It allows you to progress through the campaign objectives and gives you some excellent bonuses, and the extremely underdeveloped Green Knight character. He's just a terror-causing paladin, there's literally nothing special about him, so I'm not going to go into any serious detail on him, he just needs a rework pretty badly. However, there are a lot of campaign actions that can reduce your chivalry, such as using the ambush stance, sacking settlements, and ransoming captives. This does not mean you should not utilise those campaign mechanics. The amount of chivalry you lose is quite low. You should still interact with these mechanics because ambushing is extremely powerful and sacking settlements can net you a fortune, especially in the early game when money is quite tight. Don't be put off because of chivalry costs. You'll likely make it all back in a few battles. You may get a negative trait from doing these less chivalrous activities. Firstly, the negative traits really aren't that bad, and secondly, they can be removed by having the lord or hero hang around in a province with a church. Now, this also ties into the Blessing of the Lady. The Blessing of the Lady grants units a massive 15% ward save buff, which is fantastic. You get this blessing by either fighting and winning multiple decisive victories in a row, or one heroic victory. You will lose this bonus if you retreat from a battle. So it's always best to be prepared and have multiple armies roving around together so you never have to retreat. It is a worthwhile buff to preserve. However, there are a few notes on this. Some units already have the Blessing of the Lady, whether the army has it or not. Units like Grail Knights, Grail Guardians, Hippogriff Knights, and Royal Pegasus Knights all have the Blessing of the Lady passively. This will not stack with the army's Blessing of the Lady. So, if you have an army entirely composed of these units, the Blessing of the Lady won't do anything. The Blessing of the Lady is more important for your low or mid-tier armies. So, make sure, as I said in Reason 6, to keep your armies together in reinforcement range of one another to help you preserve this buff. Also, your lords will get the Saviour perk by reinforcing friendly armies, which gives a massive 10% speed and charge bonus army-wide, so you're really heavily incentivized to do this. One final random bit of advice: build this armory building in all of your province capitals. Not only does it boost global recruitment capacity, but it gives a stacking +2 armor bonus to all of your units. If you get enough of these buildings, your peasants will become quite formidable indeed. So, that's why you suck with Bretonnia. Do you agree with my take? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps the channel out. I want to give a massive shout out to my Patreon and channel members, who are on screen now. Also, I just want to apologise for being away for so long. I'm expecting a little baby girl in November, so I've been busy preparing for that. I had to change my old office and turn that into the baby's room, whilst getting a new office set up. I also started a new job, which has been very busy and exciting. I also went to Boomtown with lots of my beautiful friends, and I even met Mandy Dexterous. All very nice, positive life things. But I missed you all, and I'm looking forward to covering the Lords of the End Times, which, hopefully, is looking quite good. Anyway, I've been Blake, delivering my take. Thank you all so much for watching.